Welcome back, everybody. We're gonna get into the age-old argument of red dot versus holographic sight like this Huey Gen 2 right here from Vortex. And of course, we threw that magnifier on there just to spice it up a little bit because some people love the dot and some people love the holographics. And of course, we gotta talk about, does that magnifier slow you down at all? Before we dive into that and talk about everything that this rifle and setup is right here, we gotta give a shout to the sponsor today, which is Hidden Hybrid Holsters. They make that sweet suede backed leather and Kydex front hybrid holster to keep you comfortable while carrying all day. Make sure you check them out at Hidden Hybrid Holsters. Now, for those of you that have never seen that optic right there, that is the AMG UH-1 Gen 2, or named the Huey. So that is affectionately named after the UH-1 Huey helicopter that served not only our country, but many others for decades. And a ton of those helicopters are still in use today. And besides looking like a big black school bus with a monster black Airstream in tow behind it, what does a holographic sight like this actually do for you out on the range? These are obviously going to be fully enclosed holographic sights, so it's not a traditional projected red dot like most things out there. This is much like, or exactly like, the EOTech in how it actually functions. This is going to have a very crisp and very much CQB styled optic reticle in there with a little bit of extra reach with that magnifier. It is the EBR reticle, has some kind of ranging subtension stuff going on in there, the abilities to measure built into it, and of course that donut of death design, which many of us out there love. Now, holographic sights do have some benefit over traditional red dots, but there's always an argument or a holdback as far as it comes to battery life, clarity, and things like that. I know some of you out there love the holographics, some of you love the red dots, and some of you definitely can appreciate a magnifier to help those old eyes out there. If you just love any of it, all of it, or even none of it, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That's gonna make sure you get all the content when it comes out, but it's also gonna help spread our message here and get this video pushed to more people out there, maybe some of which have never seen gun content or content like this, which is good because it spreads our message and opens up eyes out there. So subscribe to the channel, comment, like, all that good stuff. And now get back to that video. So out on the range using this thing for the first time, because this is the first Huey that I have had, I do have to say it's exceptionally easy to use and the glass is very clear and that reticle is very nice to use on the range. I've always been a huge fan of that donut of death or that circular dot in the middle EOTech style reticle. I think they were the first ones that came out with it. But that is a huge help to me, especially when you're using up close and then you need that fine dot to reach a little bit further out, especially if you're going to use a flip to the side magnifier. And even when you do flip that magnifier over, you get a very clear reticle rather than a colossal bug splatter, especially for my people that have stigmatisms like I do, which is kind of where holographic sights do really shine for me. Now, looking through that exceptionally large 30mm window, it just makes target acquisition transmissions extremely easy. I didn't notice any distortions or colorized images while actually using this out on the range. Plenty of options for the subtension use in there. Quick CQB triangle at the base for those up close and personal headshots. The glass clarity, it's virtually distortion free, like I said. You will, if you look through there, notice a slight bluish color. You're really never gonna notice that under use out there in real life. But if you stare at it, you're gonna notice that on every single optic in the world. You also won't get any of that feedback from the emitter. So if you are actually facing the sun with a traditional style red dot, even some of the higher end ones, and you look into that sunlight, sometimes you'll be able to see the little LED housing kind of reflecting back forward on that front glass because the sunlight's coming in through the front. That is not something you're gonna see when it comes to holographic sights. I know some of you are gonna have some questions on the parts on this build right here. So if you do, I will link the parts list down below. It will have everything that's on here listed so you can do all of your own research should you be interested in anything you see here today. And of course, for those of you guys out on the range who like a little bit more viewing window, you can tell by the size of that thing, it's got a window literally to look through that's the size of something like a T1, T2, or even a little bit bigger with that glass. And that has to do with the fact that it's a larger overall optic, but just the design of that holographic setup. So if you like big windows, this is definitely a positive when it comes to the Huey. And should you choose to pair that Huey up with that flip to the side magnifier, it's gonna do a few things for you. One, you're gonna get that really clear picture of that reticle at a little bit of a longer distance. So 100, 300 yard engagements become a lot easier. And also you're gonna be able to do a little bit better of a job with target acquisition, positive identification, just gathering a little bit more intelligence or data on what you are actually looking out there. Now, this is on a 13.7 right here, and I can tell you reaching out to 400 meters was no problem at all with that magnifier. It was pretty simple on a standard person size plate. And for my cool guys out there that have night vision, you've got a very easy setup on the rear when it comes to your button activation. The center button is your night vision, so no flipping back and forth with the dial or buttons, although you do have the plus and minus buttons for your brightness setting. You go straight to the night vision button in the center, and you've got 4 different setups for night vision on there. So it makes it a lot easier to flip the nods down and go to work. That is, if you can actually afford a set of nods these days. Now, I know some of you may be looking at that thing and being like, that's a big honking school bus on there. But when you compare this to the size of an EOTech, it is slightly overall a little bit bigger, but the look of it is bigger because it's a fully enclosed housing on there with that kind of sacrificial lens in the front and rear, much along the lines of the Romeo, I think 8T from SIG. But overall, you're not really picking up a ton of size or a ton of weight, so it's still gonna be very viable and very usable out there. Well, now let's talk about, does running a magnifier slow you down depending on your target distance? So we all know that red dots and holographics are super fast to acquire target, get on target, and use them. Now, when you flip that 3x magnifier over, you're obviously gonna have a zoom effect. So when you come up, it might be a little bit of an oddball for your eye to look at. Now, some people out there can run these things blazing fast. I do notice when I run them, because I don't run them a ton, it does slow me down a bit. Now, obviously, they're very positive for further distance, positive ID, and getting a little bit more intelligence on your target out there. But up close and personal, you really have to put the time in to be just as fast with a magnifier on there as you are with just a plain Jane dot or holographic. I will say though, when I flipped that magnifier over, those shots at 25 and 50 were far more accurate using the magnifier than just using the optic without it. So there's always going to be a give and a take there when it comes to magnification versus open red dot or holographic. Now, when it comes to the Huey, the Gen 2 right here, this is not per se a new optic, even though this is the 2nd gen. So why am I going back to this? And it's because I wanted another holographic sight. I hadn't tested this version, and there are really some good things that made me want to get into the Huey versus some other ones out there in the market. Obviously, the holographic stuff is really good for my eye having astigmatism. Also, you get good stuff on here like an integrated quick throw mount. It's going to be that lower 1/3. Super easy to clean. Uses a CR123 battery with that built-in battery tray that has the twist off cap. Now, battery life on these is going to be about 1,500 hours. And I know that doesn't sound alike when we have 50,000 hour red dots, but I can assure you that's a fake number. So 1,500 hours on a holographic is kind of typical because the technology on them is quite a bit different. So until there is a meteoric change in technology, you're not going to get the battery life out of a holographic that you are a traditional projected LED red dot. But there are always advantages and disadvantages when you choose to go with one or the other. It's got other options like a 14-hour shutoff. It has the 15-day settings, 8 night vision settings. It's got the donut of deaths, which is 65 MOA, and then a 1 MOA in the middle. Super easy to use. It's segmented a little bit more than some others. You're not going to cover the target any more than you need to. Super easy adjustments that are depressed into the body. Very easy to change back and forth that night vision setting, which is not true with all other optics out there. It's an all aluminum body design, has a really solid feel to it, more so than some others. And the biggest positive for me is this is made in the United States and can be had for about $5.99, which is kind of in line with the other US made holographic optics like this. So for everyone in there that's ever put a comment down below or on anybody's channel that says it's made in China or buy American, you are now obligated to reach into your pocket, bust out that wallet, run to Vortex and order yourself a Huey Gen 2 because it's US made. And you've said so in the comments, so you have to follow through on your word or you're not a man. When it comes to the other specs on the AMG UH-1 Gen 2 right here, you're gonna have 100 MOA of adjustment. They're gonna be in half MOA increments. Super easy to get this thing zeroed out on the range. Nobody's gonna have a problem with that. It's gonna be 3.9 inches long, 11.6 ounces, parallax free, and has proven to be pretty durable. Now, I know some of you just need the full specs of everything that's going on here with some music so you can digest all that reading. Well, how about some final thoughts on that UH-1 Gen 2 right there? And of course, we got to talk about how this whole thing is outfitted right here. So she may not be the smallest or the cheapest thing out there, but she's a heck of a good US made optic that's got a lot of use out there. A ton of people are running these things and they've proven to be very durable. But what about that magnifier? So let's talk about that a little bit. So I'm a taller guy, I'm 6'4", so I generally run my stock all the way out. So when I'm using the traditional sight, I'm easily back here, running things good to go. And when I flip that magnifier over, you have that eye box. So I really have to suck in close to that, like here, to get my view through that and not have a little just tiny viewport right there. Now, I guess that's just tall guy problems, but I have that issue with just about every magnifier out there, and it's something you have to get used to. And like I said, since I run my stock so far out because I have those long arms, that's kind of personal to me. But just be aware there is an eye box so you don't get that really clear 100% relief that you do on a just traditional open red dot. You flip the magnifier in and you go from about here to coming up to about there. So there is some movement that's going to be needed. Now, I will say it's a pretty awesome little micro magnifier in a 3X. I think it'll be had for about 260 bucks. Comes with the quick throw mount, and overall, I'm extremely happy with it. You also need to know you do have to center, not zero. You're not going to zero your dot to this, but you have to center your dot to your magnifier to make sure it's directly in the center. It doesn't change the zero or anything. It's just making sure you've got the best view possible. And then of course you set your ocular relief for your eye. Some people don't know that, and they ask why their dot or reticle is way off in a corner. It's because you got to zero your magnifier. And finally, let's talk about how this thing is equipped and what all goes into this rifle, because I absolutely love this one. So this is an Aero Precision, don't tread on me, upper and lower receiver. We're gonna have a BCM stock out back, standard carbine spring and a standard carbine buffer, Magpul K2 grip. That's one of my favorite combos. I love the difference between these two furnitures and how they feel together. Radian Raptor charging handle. It's gonna have a Aero Precision DLC bolt. Of course, the optics that we already talked about. It's gonna have an SLR 12.7 inch rail, which is gonna fit almost completely flush with that 13.7 pin and welded Roscoe that has the dead air chemo device on it. That's the 13.7 Roscoe sauce pack. Purebred, absolutely love that barrel. It is gassed exceptionally well. Strike Industries angled foregrip there. And this is the Valhalla tactical light here with that ODA, that omnidirectional activation switch on it. They're the same company pretty much as HRT. Awesome lights, super bright, and overall, like I said, love this rifle. It's one of my favorites, and you're gonna see a lot more use out of this thing on the channel as I get more and more optics in for testing. And I almost forgot one of the most important pieces, and that is the trigger. So that is a Rise 535 in there, which is an exceptional trigger. It's good. It's not blackout defense good, but I had it laying around, bought it some time ago, and I just had to use it, so I threw it in here. Now, I know that was a lot, and there was a lot of positive when it comes to the Huey Gen 2 right here, but is there anything I would change on this because nobody gets a pass? I would like to see full activation here when it comes to the motion sensing. So auto off, auto on, and maybe go down to like an hour. So 14 hours is kind of long for an auto shut off for me. I think the standard is much lower than in the industry, and it should also just have shake awake. So you put it down for like half hour, it goes off. As soon as you pick it up, it goes back on. I would love to see that, and I think that would also really help that battery life. And that is what I've got for you today on the AMG UH-1 Huey Gen 2. So huge thank you to my Patreons. It's because of you that so much of the stuff that goes on here on the channel is absolutely possible. If you're interested in supporting me in any way, you can check out the build list. You can go to the Patreon, use any links down below. All of that is a massive support structure. Most of all, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like. All of that stuff is a huge support structure for the channel, and it only helps spread all of our message. And if you think you're subscribed, give me the discount, double check there. You keep doing it out on the range. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.